To kick off the proceedings, I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Choi Kwok, the Director and CEO of ISEAS Yusof Ishak Institute, on stage to deliver the welcome remarks. Mr. Choi, please.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the Regional Outlook Forum 2023, which is the 26th conference in this annual series organized by the ISEAS Yusof Ishak Institute. After 2 years of online Zoom forums for ROF, it is really a great pleasure to see everyone in person again. However, we have not gone completely offline, as we have decided to make this a hybrid event to allow more people to participate. I would therefore also like to extend warm greetings to our online audience, many of whom are following the proceedings from abroad. Before I go further, let me also first express my thanks to all the sponsors, but especially to our gold sponsors for this year's forum, which are the Asia Foundation and Nikkei Group Asia, for their generous support that has made this year's ROF possible. In particular, their support has made the forum accessible and affordable to the wide audience that we have gathered here today. The ROF convenes at the start of each year to analyze high-level trends and issues that will have the biggest impact on Southeast Asia in the short to medium term, and to consider how key developments in specific countries in the region will unfold. This year's theme, Understanding the Drivers of Change in a Disrupted World, conveys the intention for our agenda to move beyond the immediate day-to-day drama, of which there are plenty, and which will continue to capture the media headlines, to go beyond that to understand the deeper forces at work that will, over time, in a manner of speaking, bring the chickens home to roost, whether in a positive or a negative fashion. To help us with this, we have gathered a highly distinguished slate of speakers to help think through the complex issues on the table. We will start with a keynote address by a distinguished scholar and former Foreign Minister of Singapore, Mr. George Yeo. Given a free hand to pick his own topic, Mr. Yeo has chosen to speak on the current state of world affairs and Southeast Asia's part in it. He has also kindly agreed to a question and answer session that will be chaired by ISEAS chairperson, Professor Chan Hing-chi, later on. In session 1, Ashley Tallis, Wu Xing-po, Nguyen Hung Son, and C. Rajamohan, all of whom are deep strategic thinkers, will address how the ongoing war in Ukraine will impact on the strategic dynamics in the region. There's no question that the war in Ukraine is the biggest event to hit the world in the last 20 or more years. It has upended the norms and foundations of the international system set up after the end of the Second World War. In addition, it has complicated the US-China rivalry, slowed down the recovery from the pandemic, and compounded the climate-related energy and food security problems, among other things. The panel will assess the US's objectives and strategies in the Russia-Ukraine war, the prospects for further deterioration in US-China relations, and the likelihood of an outbreak of an unintended conflict between the two. They will also discuss the implications of these things on the region, particularly the strategic choices available to the countries seeking to preserve a degree of agency amidst the heightening great power rivalries. In session 2, we will dive deeper into how the region is coping with the economic problems brought on by the war, the pandemic, and the collapse of the latest tech bubble. A few days ago, the IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva warned that 1/3 of the world economy is expected to be in recession. And she added that for those countries that are not in recession, it would feel like a recession for hundreds of millions of the people there. Last October, the IMF had reduced its 2023 forecast for global growth to 2.7%, which is the slowest growth since 2001, apart from the great financial crisis and the acute phase of the COVID pandemic. On the other hand, the region may benefit from further relocation of global value chains from China, as well as China's recent reopening. We are privileged to have two highly respected professionals in the trade and finance sector to share with us in their session their perspectives on the outlook for the regional economy. Bapak Tom Lembong was formerly Indonesia's trade minister, and Tan Sri Nazir Razak, formerly chairman of the CIMB Bank, will share their views on the key risks facing the global economy amidst the current inflationary environment and supply chain disruptions, as well as the implications and opportunities for the Southeast Asian region. For sessions 3, 4, and 5, we will put the focus on a few key countries in the region. In session 3, Professor Adev Tongmong will help assess the prospects for a return to political stability in Myanmar. Since the coup by the Tatmadaw in February 2021, the country has been in eternal conflict that verges on being a civil war. The key questions here are whether the military State Administration Council will be able to hold its planned elections, which is seized as an exit strategy to resolve the current political impasse, and if so, whether it will be accepted inside and outside Myanmar. The other speaker in session 3, Dr. Kem Tong Sung Kum Rung Mong, will share his reading on the current state of Thailand's democracy and address the various trends and factors that seem to suggest a rather bleak and uncertain outlook there. In session 4, we are very honored to have two senior politicians from Malaysia to provide their perspectives on the political outlook for Malaysia. After the historic election in 2018 that saw a new coalition govern the country for the first time before it fell apart less than 2 years later, the latest election has shown that the forces that propelled GE14 results have not dissipated. GE15 resulted in an unprecedented hung parliament and witnessed for the second time in recent times the intervention of the monarchy to break the political deadlock. Minister for Transport, YB Anthony Look, who is also Secretary General of the Democratic Action Party, and Tuan Khairi Jamaluddin, a former cabinet minister and UMNO youth chief, will discuss the deep issues in the Malaysian political landscape and the likelihood of Malaysia settling into a more politically stable trajectory after seeing 4 prime ministers take the helm in quick succession. Is the current unity government just a marriage of convenience, or does it take on a life and a logic that can be enduring? In session 5, we welcome another 2 prominent political figures, this time from Indonesia, Bapak Anies Baswedan, former governor of Jakarta, and Ibu Yeni Wahid, the director of the Wahid Institute, will address the trends and developments that have influenced the functioning of Indonesia's democracy and its outlook as Indonesia prepares to hold its presidential and parliamentary elections in 2024. What kind of political system and society is Indonesia becoming? Is the era of mega coalitions and convergence of elite interests here to stay? After a successful G20 presidency, can Indonesia continue to play a leading role internationally as a middle power in the midst of the US-China competition? And if so, what does this mean for ASEAN? I suspect that a recurring theme that may emerge in today's discussions across the sessions is the question of governmental capacity and resilience. Every country we are discussing today, whether the major powers or the various Southeast Asian countries, are experiencing in their own ways mounting domestic political pressures and stress. These are driven in part by the long tail of the COVID-19 pandemic and the ongoing war in Ukraine, which have increased financial stress and exacerbated domestic social political inequalities. The knock-on effects, which have been a deepening of political fissures and ideological divides, leading to greater risk of political instability and policy paralysis. The cumulative effects of pressures on multiple fronts are likely to challenge any national leader's ability to focus on the right priorities and make good strategic decisions. So on that note, you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to all our speakers, so it is now my pleasure to give way to the keynote session by Mr. George Yeo. For that session, I'm very pleased to welcome Ambassador Chan Hing-chi, Chairman of the ISEAS Yusof Ishak Board of Trustees, to introduce the session and also to introduce our keynote speaker. Professor Chan, if I may hand the floor over to you, please.